Story number 1. This is what happens when predators are released from prison. I was around 13 years old when I had an encounter with an online predator. My parents told me that it was a near-death experience, but I can hardly remember it. They sent me to a therapist for a few months after it happened, and the only thing that she said was that the event was so traumatic I had suppressed it. Long story short, my parents got me a laptop just after I started high school to make doing my homework a little easier. Of course, with easy access to the World Wide Web comes the same easy access to chat rooms and social media. Back then, we used things like Mixit and MySpace. I was a real big fan of the one specific chat room in Mixit called Cave. I was a socially awkward kid, so I didn't make a lot of friends in my school. Most, if not all, of my friends were online. I met this one guy through the same chat room on Mixit. He was the same age as me, at least that's what he said, and we seemed to like all the same stuff. I lived for the moments I got to talk to him. I would jump onto my laptop the moment I got home from school and spend all weekend chatting with him. I didn't let my parents know. If they asked, I just told them I was talking with someone I knew from school. I guess I thought they wouldn't like him, or some part of me knew that I shouldn't be talking to someone that I don't know. He eventually suggested that we meet up somewhere. He told me about these action figures that he had and wanted to show them to me. Along with being socially awkward, I was also a huge geek. Yeah, it's no surprise why I didn't have a lot of friends. Anyway, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity. So we made a plan to meet up at a park near where I lived. I don't want to bore you with the details, but when we finally met up, I realized everything he told me was a lie. He wasn't 13. I'm not sure how old he was, but he looked older than my father. Still, I wanted to see the action figures, so when he asked me to follow him back to his car to look at them, I didn't argue. I don't remember much more of what happened after that, and my parents don't really want to tell me about it either. I guess that's the part that I've suppressed. All I can remember is that my parents realized that something was wrong when I didn't come home after school, and the police eventually found me. The guy was arrested, and that was that. I kind of moved on with my life. I almost forgot about it until at least 10 years later. I was in my 3rd year at university when my mother called me up one day randomly to tell me that he'd been released from prison. Apparently, one of the officers that were there when they arrested him called my parents to warn them. I didn't see a big deal. He had been out of my life for a long time, and I didn't expect him to come back into it. After all, I'd been led to believe that most people who go to prison come out changed and ready to re-enter society. You could say the information that he was released went in one ear and out the other. I went on with my life like before. Went to my classes, finished my assignments, and enjoyed my quiet days alone. I didn't pay much attention to the new janitor in my dorm. Why would I? The years hadn't done anything to change my social anxiety and awkwardness. I kept to myself. It's safe to say I had absolutely no idea what to do when the new janitor randomly started up a conversation with me one day. The moment he started talking to me, it felt familiar. He pulled me out of my shell. He was charming and seemed to know a lot about me. It wasn't long until I couldn't wait for the end of the day because I knew that I could go back to my dorm and he would be there. I couldn't wait till the moment I got to spend talking with him each day. The days he wasn't there were some of the worst days in my life. Obviously, the feeling was very familiar. To this day, I have no idea how he was able to make me feel that way. I don't understand what it was about him that made me feel so attached. He made me feel understood. Whenever I was speaking with him, I felt like I could be myself, and I never felt that way, not even with my own parents. In the end, I realized that it was all part of his cruel and sick game. I got to my dorm early one day. I can't remember exactly why, but I think it had something to do with one of my lectures being canceled. Anyway, it was about 2 hours or so earlier than I usually go to my dorm. I went to unlock the door, but as I pushed the key into the keyhole, the door gently pushed open. My initial thought was that one of my roommates had forgotten to close and lock it when they left. I knew that I hadn't. The door squealed like a baby pig as it swung open on its rusted hinges. The silence of the empty hallway was interrupted by its echo. I stood in the doorway for a moment. Something didn't feel right. I might have thought to blame my roommates, but in the back of my mind I knew that they would never have forgotten to lock the door. Almost as if directly answering my concerns, I spotted a shadow shoot past the end of the hallway leading into my room. I can't fully describe what I felt in that moment. It got cold all of a sudden and a chill ran up and down my spine. Every hair on my body stood on end. The air felt thick and heavy, causing me to hyperventilate. I guess I should have called the police, but I wasn't that smart. I tiptoed into the dorm, making sure to leave the door wide open behind me for a quick escape. I suspected that it might be one of my roommates, but I remained cautious as I snuck through the hallway. As I neared my bedroom door, the sound of shuffling inside became painfully obvious. There was someone or something inside my room. That should have been a sign for me to run straight back out of there and call for help, but I kept going. I went all the way into my bedroom, pushing the door open slowly and revealing an empty and slightly messy room. Yes, it was empty. I instantly felt stupid and pushed the thought of a potential intruder out of my mind completely. I took one step inside my room, turned on the lights, and froze. I saw them. Two wide eyes were staring at me from the small, dark gap beneath my bed. My heart was beating at 1,000 miles an hour, and blood rushed to my head. I stared right back at them. I wished they would blink, but they didn't. They almost seemed inhuman. "Hello," a deep and familiar voice came from underneath the bed. I ran out of there so fast you'll never be able to understand. There was a new strength in me that helped me run faster than I have ever run in my entire life. Of course, after this point I called the police. I said the voice from underneath my bed was familiar, and that was the heartbreaking part. At first, the unblinking eyes, along with the deep and sudden hello, scared me to death. It was only after I'd calmed down that I realized the voice belonged to the janitor I'd befriended. That was only the start of it. After arresting him for breaking and entering, the police looked deeper into his history. That was when they informed me that he was the same man they'd arrested for kidnapping me all those years ago. I couldn't believe it. The same predator that had targeted me as a child was able to find me a whole 10 years later. He'd only been out of prison for a few months, and finding me again was the first thing he did. It was sickening to think about what he was doing in my room, and what his endgame was with me. Did he just want to be my friend, or had he planned on finishing what he started all those years ago? Story number 2. As a parent, the last thing I ever wanted to do was teach my children about predators. It was one of the darkest moments of my life, but it had to be done. The problem started when my daughter first got into gaming. She'd been spending most of her free time using my old console. So, for her 10th birthday, we got her a console of her own. I'm not up to speed on what the best console is these days, but she seemed very happy with the PlayStation 4 that I got her. That was quite a few years ago now. She loved it and spent even more time on it than she did on my old console. I didn't realize at the time that I was opening up a can of worms. With the new console came online gaming, and with online gaming came the opportunity for predators to gain access to my daughter. This happened only a year after we got her the console. She found this new online game, Call of Duty, and it quickly became one of her favorite games. She'd met someone through the game. My husband and I thought nothing of it. We were under the impression that they were a 9-year-old girl. We believed everything this predator had told our daughter. Soon after meeting, my daughter had shared a lot of information with this predator. She didn't know any better, and I blame myself for not suspecting something sinister. After sharing her number with the predator, they started talking out of the game. I had no idea what they were talking about. Thankfully, after one of their conversations had gotten too uncomfortable for my daughter, she came straight to me. When I saw the messages this predator was sending my daughter, I felt sick. "Send me a picture. I want to see what you look like." "Okay." "You look pretty. Send me a picture with your shirt off." "I can't. My mom won't let me do that." "Go to the bathroom and send one with your shirt off. She won't find out. I want to see what you look like without your shirt on." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I confiscated her phone and waited for my husband to get home. It was clear that my daughter was not talking to a 9-year-old girl. It was disgusting. Once my husband got home, we decided to get the police involved. It was a long and stressful process, but they were able to trace him using his online information and the conversations he had with my daughter. He ended up getting some jail time, and we monitored my daughter's online activity a lot closer after that point. We thought that would be the end of it, but we were wrong. The police might have arrested the predator, but it wasn't long until they released him. Aside from his conversation with my daughter, he hadn't done anything. He'd gotten out on bail, and that was when we learned exactly how much information my daughter had shared with him. I don't blame her for not warning us beforehand. I can only be proud that she realized something was wrong and came to me for help, but I do wish she had told us that she shared our address with the predator. After he got released on bail, he showed up at our door. I couldn't believe the confidence he had. He knocked on our front door. I don't know what his plan was. I didn't even know it was him. My husband was busy fixing something upstairs, so I answered the door. I asked who he was, and all he did was ask to speak with my daughter. He asked for her by name. Of course, I was shocked and a little confused. He looked to be in his mid-20s, so I had no idea why he would be asking for my little girl by name. I assumed he was from her school, but I knew all of her teachers. He realized my suspicion early on and explained how he was the father of one of her friends. If he had said he was from her school, I might have believed him, but I knew for a fact that he wasn't the father of any of her friends. I slammed the door in his face and called for my husband, but before I could turn the key in the lock, he grabbed the hand and began pushing the door open. I ended up using all the strength I had in me to hold the door closed while screaming for my husband. The whole time he was trying to push the door open, and he was calling out my daughter's name. It makes me sick just thinking about it. He was obsessed with her. I really thought that nothing was going to stop him. When my husband got there, he didn't ask any questions or hesitate. He pushed me aside, threw the door open, and jumped the guy. While they fought on the street, I ran to my phone and called the police. It was, indeed, the same online predator that they had arrested a few weeks before. He had been released on bail that same day that he arrived on my doorstep. I still find it hard to believe how crazy the world is and how sick people can be. I'm just glad that my daughter is okay and that I am now equipped with the information to make sure nothing like this ever happens again.